I'm live from Sydney, Ohio on tape. And this week, we should be talking about something to do with veterans. Maybe a history of Bobby Lashley, who was a veteran. Maybe a history of another veteran wrestler. Somebody in the armed forces. But I forgot it was Memorial Day. So instead, we're talking about fake Diesel and Razor. Now, in 1996, Kevin Nash, who played Diesel in WWF, and Scott Hall, who played Razor Ramon, were leaving for WCW for more pay and less time contracts. And Vince was concerned because there were two of his top guys leaving at the same time. This made Bruce Pritchard concerned, according to Vince Russo, who ate dinner with Bruce Pritchard about once a week and was running WWF Magazine at the time. But Bruce Pritchard convinced Vince McMahon, I cannot talk tonight apparently, that they still owned the Diesel and Razor Ramon gimmicks. Those were still WWF intellectual property. Now, that is true. A lot of the gimmicks you see on WWF television, they own, but they do not own the wrestlers. So, like if if Seth Rollins left, they still own the name and the trademark for Seth Rollins stuff, but they do not own Seth Rollins the man. This is making sense to any of you. The person playing Seth Rollins they don't own, but the name Seth Rollins they own. I'm trying to explain this. So they own Diesel and Razor Ramon, the characters, the trademarks, the mannerisms, the shirts, the toys, all that stuff. But they didn't own Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. So they decided after Kevin Nash and Scott Hall left that they were going to put different people in those characters, just like when you replace a character in a TV show with a different actor, like when they replaced the Darrens in Bewitched. That is a very dated reference, by the way. For those of you who don't know what Bewitched is, it is not just a movie with Will Ferrell. It was a television show in the 60s and had like 8 Darrens on there. Darren was the husband, and there were like 8 different people who played him during the series. And there were several other television shows where they replaced actors who played characters in the television shows. I mean, there were like 3 people who played Jan Brady during the Brady Bunch. I mean, they just swapped out actors. So they're going to swap out actors playing Diesel and Razor Ramon. According to Jake the Snake Roberts, this was not his idea. This idea came directly from Vince McMahon. Because Jake the Snake Roberts said this is just going to make people turn over to WCW and want to watch Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, who were Diesel and Razor Ramon. So they got Glenn Jacobs, who originally played Isaac Yankem DDS, which no one remembers, who was an evil dentist who no one remembers, and that gimmick fell flat. He was brought in by Jerry Lawler to help in his feud with Bret Hart, and he was an evil dentist. That's about all Isaac Yankem DDS was. So I put Glenn Jacobs in Diesel, and Paul Heyman said they had a guy in ECW who did a better Razor than Scott Hall did in Rick Bogner. And so they brought him in to play Razor. Now, Jim Cornette was in charge of finding out Kevin Nash and Scott Hall's moveset when they played Diesel and Razor Ramon. So he watched hours of news, hours of footage, learned all their moves so they could train these guys to wrestle like Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. I don't know why the lights keep going like that. It must be too close or too far. I don't know. The lights are like flashing. I don't get it. But anyways. So to view these guys, they originally had Jim Ross, old Lovable JR, who was the voice of the Attitude Era and was the voice of WWE for many years, come out and cut a heel promo about how he was running off guys in WWF because WWF wasn't giving him the respect he deserved, and the people didn't buy it. They didn't want to boo JR because no one's ever wanted to boo JR. They tried turning him heel again in the Attitude Era, and once again, no one wanted to boo JR. They booed Michael Cole at that point. So no one wanted to boo JR, but JR said he was bringing back Diesel and Razor Ramon, and in came Glenn Jacobs as Diesel and Rick Bogner as Razor Ramon, and people immediately booed. Not JR, the fake Diesel and Razor Ramon. Now, Vince McMahon immediately saw a problem with this. And instead of pushing them as big-time singles wrestlers, like he would have if Kevin Nash and Scott Hall came back, he mainly put them in tag team matches. As a tag team, and I don't think Diesel and Razor Ramon ever really worked that much as a tag team in WWF. I think it was more, I mean, they worked a little bit during the early 90s, but it was more 1, 2, 3 Kid with Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels with Diesel, or Shawn Michaels with Razor Ramon and 1, 2, 3 Kid with Diesel. You know, sometimes Triple H was thrown in there, but they're typically on opposite sides. But they worked on the same side, and because they were getting booed anyways, they let them work as heels. But no one booed JR. Because JR, his heart wasn't in being a heel, according to Bruce Pritchard. According to Bruce Pritchard, JR wants to be the good guy. He wants to be the white knight. He wants to be the cowboy who shoots everybody in the end. So JR, his heart isn't in being a heel, and so he could never sell as a heel. And so eventually they dropped the heel JR, and their fake Diesel and Razor Ramon, or as Bruce Pritchard calls them, recast Diesel and Razor Ramon. Their last match was at the Royal Rumble in 97, where fake Razor Ramon was eliminated in the early goings, but fake Diesel lasted until the bottom 3 before he was never seen again. Now, of course, JR went on after this debacle to be the voice of WWE for many years. Glenn Jacobs, who played fake Diesel, went on to be Undertaker's long-lost brother Kane and had a Hall of Fame and went into Hall of Fame as Kane. And is now going to be the second wrestler president after Abe Lincoln, if you watched my video last week. And Rick Bogner continued to wrestle as Razor Ramon. He really didn't do anything, and he died in 2019 at the age of 49, sadly. So that's the deal with fake Diesel and Razor Ramon. It was a bad idea. The fans never bought it. It probably got more people to tune over to WCW, where Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were doing the NWO thing, because they were more believable as themselves, being Diesel and Razor Ramon, than Glenn Jacobs and Rick Bogner were believable as Diesel and Razor Ramon. And heel JR, they tried several times throughout his career in WWF, and it never worked. So tune in next week, and we will talk about when Mike Awesome left ECW, with the ECW World title and went to WCW.